I remember that night vividly, and it still sends chills down my spine. My family lives in a peaceful neighborhood where everyone knows each other. It's a place where you feel safe, where kids play outside without a worry, and neighbors greet each other warmly. But one night changed everything. It was a Friday evening, and my parents received a frantic call from the hospital. My aunt had been in a terrible accident, and they needed to rush to be with her. In the chaos, they decided to leave me at home, thinking it would be safer and faster. I was 10 years old at the time, mature for my age, and I knew how to handle myself. Plus, it wasn't supposed to be for long. I was sitting on the couch, wrapped in my favorite blanket, watching my favorite TV show. The house was quiet, save for the sounds of the television and the occasional creak of the old wooden floors. It was around 9 p.m., and the street outside was unusually still. I was completely engrossed in my show when I heard a knock at the door. My heart skipped a beat. We rarely had visitors, especially not at this hour. I paused the TV and walked slowly to the door. We had a small security screen installed, so I peeked through it to see who it was. To my surprise, it was our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Thompson. She was in her 70s, a kind woman who always had a smile and a cookie for me whenever I visited. But I hadn't seen her much lately. She looked different tonight though, disheveled and strangely intense. She knocked again, more urgently this time. "Sweetie, it's Mrs. Thompson," she called out, her voice sounding odd, almost strained. "I came over to keep you company. Let's play together and watch TV." Something felt off. My parents had always told me not to open the door to strangers, but Mrs. Thompson wasn't a stranger. Still, there was a nagging feeling in my gut that something wasn't right. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the lock. As I was about to turn the lock, I noticed something shiny in her hand. She was holding a large kitchen knife. My blood ran cold. I couldn't believe my eyes. Why would Mrs. Thompson have a knife? I backed away from the door, my heart pounding in my chest. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Thompson," I stammered, "but I can't open the door. My parents aren't home." Her face twisted into an eerie smile. "It's okay, dear. I just want to help. Open the door and we can have some fun." Panic surged through me. I didn't know what to do. I ran to the kitchen and grabbed the phone to call my parents, but there was no answer. I tried calling the neighbors, but no one picked up. The minutes felt like hours as I frantically dialed number after number. Mrs. Thompson kept knocking, her knocks becoming louder and more frantic. "Let me in, sweetie. Don't be afraid." I ran upstairs to my room and locked the door. I hid under my bed, clutching my phone, trying to stay as quiet as possible. My mind raced with fear and confusion. What had happened to Mrs. Thompson? Why was she acting like this? I texted my parents, telling them what was happening. They replied quickly, telling me to stay hidden and that they were calling the police. It felt like an eternity, but I knew help was on the way. From under my bed, I could hear Mrs. Thompson moving around outside. She was mumbling to herself, and I could hear the faint scrape of the knife against the door. Tears streamed down my face as I tried to control my breathing. Finally, I heard sirens in the distance. The sound grew louder and louder until it was right outside. I heard the front door burst open and voices shouting. I stayed hidden, too scared to move. After what felt like forever, I heard a calm voice call out, "It's okay, you can come out now, you're safe." I crawled out from under the bed and slowly made my way downstairs. The police were there, and they had Mrs. Thompson in custody. She looked completely different from the kind woman I had known. Her eyes were wild, and she was muttering incoherently. The police explained that Mrs. Thompson had been suffering from severe dementia. She had escaped from her house, and in her confused state, she thought I was someone from her past. The knife was from her own kitchen, and she didn't even realize she had it. My parents arrived soon after, and we hugged tightly, relieved that I was safe. The whole neighborhood was shaken by the incident, and it took a long time for things to feel normal again. Mrs. Thompson was taken to a care facility where she could be looked after properly. That night changed me. I learned to trust my instincts and to always be cautious, even in the safest of neighborhoods.